Hey, you guys, welcome to another episode of Care Dangerous Talk. You know what? I'm bringing it to you for season 3, baby. I hope you were watching when I had Professor Kaba on. Man, he really dropped some jewels. Now, this young lady I'm about to bring on today, hey, she was supposed to come on season 2, but I promised you guys I was going to make sure she came back. I've been in communications with her. She's ready to go, and we're going to have a good time. I want you guys to be very active today, asking questions. We're going to take some audience questions, and we're just going to have a great discussion. So get ready because we're about to go for a ride. I'm telling you, this is what Care Dangerous Talk is all about. But you know what we got to do first. You know. Hello, Miss Jane Elliott.
Hello there.
Teacher, lecturer. What else can I add to that list?
Educator. Take off teacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm an educator. Yeah, an educator. I'm gonna stop you right there because it's important that people be called educators instead of teachers. Teachers dispense facts and figures to get kids ready for the end of term testing. The word educator comes from the root dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix r, the suffix or means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Huge difference between teaching and educating, okay?
Yes, it is. Look, my bad.
No, not your bad, your education. See, you were educated to say people who teach you anything are teachers, and they are, but those who lead you out of ignorance are educators. And the people who are teaching today are teaching that Columbus discovered America, when in fact, people from Africa, countries in Africa, came to what we call America, which is really the United States of America, between 10,000 and 20,000 years ago. So we need to stop saying that Columbus discovered America. Columbus was not the first person here, and neither was Amerigo Vespucci. Black people we call Black Africans, were the first people to come onto this land. Make no mistake about that. We've got to start telling the truth in school, and that means we educate people instead of teaching the lie.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Go ahead. I'm going to interrupt you every time you say something that bothers me. So now your listeners are thinking, why doesn't that witch shut up? But they aren't thinking witch. They're thinking the B word. And I know that. And I can accept that because the B word for me is an acronym for being in total control, honey.
Well, then I'm one of those too.
Yeah,
Either way you slice it.
Here are two brown-skinned people, both of whom are trying to be in total control, honey, and it's going to work. It's going to work. Eventually, the whole world will be under the control of people who look like you and me. That's the way it is.
Well, let's allow some people to come on into the chat, but I want to bring it back for you. I want to bring it back for the audience, and I want you to tell us a little bit about how you grew up in Riceville, Iowa, because I think it's important that we kind of build this scene of how you became the educator, Jane Elliott.
Well, number one, I didn't grow up in Riceville, Iowa. You don't grow up. If you stay where you were born and raised, you don't grow up, you grow older. I grew older after I left Riceville, Iowa, but as a child, from the age of birth to 18, I lived on a farm, a really hard luck farm. 7 children, one of whom died at the age of 3.5, broke my father's heart. The other 6 of us continued to live and continued to break my father's heart occasionally. But that's part of being. If you have children, you can expect to have problems. We had 7 children. We had thousands of problems.
Right.
There were no people of color, what we called people of color, in Riceville, Iowa then, and there are now, because they are not allowed to feel welcome in Riceville, Iowa to this day, nor am I allowed to feel welcome in Riceville, Iowa by about 20-30% of the population, because when I went to college, I found out that the people of color there, that we called at that time Negroes, were smarter than I was. They had more money than I had. They knew more than I did, and they had had experiences that I would never have. And I realized that I had been lied to from birth until the age of 18. And I decided at that point that I was going to become a teacher, an educator, and I was going to educate people to the truth about race. And I began to do that absolutely after the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed.
Now,
At
let me
that time,
here because I was going to say that. I know.
okay, all right, shut up, Jane.
April the 4th, 1968, right?
Yeah.
You know, you heard a white reporter tell a black local, I have a quote here. When our leader, John F. Kennedy, was killed several years ago, his widow held us together. Who's going to control your people? When you heard that, Miss Elliott, what went through your mind?
I was furious. I had come home from school that day with a teepee under my arm that my previous third graders had made, and we were going to put up in the classroom the next day. We were going to paint it with Indian symbols chosen by white folks. We were going to sing Indian songs written by white folks. We were going to read Indian poetry written by white folks. And we were going to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins," which was given to them by so-called white missionaries. I walked in the door of my house. The telephone was ringing. I answered the telephone. It was my sister. She said, "Is your television on?" I said, "No." She said, "You better turn on." I said, "Why?" She said, "They killed him." I said, "Who'd we kill this time?" She said, "Martin Luther King Jr." And I can't say that without feeling sick to my stomach, because Martin Luther King Jr. had, and I know that some of you are thinking, she's putting this on. I wish I could put this on. I wish I could pretend that I am to this day angered and disgusted and really, really depressed about the society in which we live, in which we would kill a man simply because he said it's all right not to be white. And that's exactly why we killed him. That, and because we knew if he and Malcolm X joined forces, and they were very close to doing that, those two men and their followers could upset this country to a tremendous degree. So they both had to die, and they were both killed in order to prevent that happening. Now, you can say it any other way you want to, but that's exactly that's the way I see it. You can look it up and find out that I'm right. I couldn't believe it. I was just, the world stopped turning for a moment for me that day. And I knew that I was going to have to go into my classroom the next day and explain the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. to my students, for whom he had been one of our heroes of the month in February. And I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how I was going to explain this killing to my students in the land of the free and the home of the brave, where I know that I'm free, but you have to be brave. I know that, and you know that, and there's something very wrong with that, but that's the way it is. I got the kids fed, got them to bed, washed and dried the teepee, had it on the living room floor, was ironing it, and there came a famous broadcaster who said to three members of the black community, "When our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line?" I thought, oh my God, he didn't say that. So I changed the channel. And there was another famous pale-faced male saying, "Don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people, because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can?" And I thought, that's it. I'm not listening to this anymore. I rolled up the teepee. I threw it into the bottom of the closet, and I closed the door. I got my husband's supper. He worked at a factory in Charles City in the daytime at that time, and on the night show, on the evening shift. And when he came in, I was crying, and he said, "They killed him, didn't they?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, I'm going to allow for my children to have the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I walked in his moccasins." I'm going to allow my white third graders to walk in the shoes of a child of color in my classroom for a day. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I'm going to treat my students positively or negatively on the basis of the color of their eyes, because eye color and skin color are caused by the same chemical, melanin. You have a lot of melanin in your eyes. I only have a little. So I'm blue-eyed, and my husband was very brown-eyed and absolutely beautiful." He said, "Jane, you'll lose your job." I said, "If I lose my job for teaching my students the truth, I don't want to teach in Riceville, Iowa." He said, "You better be careful. We need that money. These kids need to be these kids need to be fed." I said, "Well, if they fire me, I'll find another job somewhere." He said, "Well, no, you won't, but do what you have to." He ate supper. He went to bed. I went to bed. I said, the only prayer I ever say anymore, oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Within 5 minutes after I started the exercise the next day, I got the answer to that prayer. And I found out that I'd better be careful what I pray for, because you might not like what you get when your prayer is answered. I went into my classroom the next morning. I separated, and we talked about the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. We talked about how wrong it is. We talked about how it feels to be something other than what we call white in this country. And I could see that these kids weren't learning a thing. And I said, do you kids have any idea how it would feel to be treated badly on the basis of something about you that you can't control?
Mhm.
No. Would you like, no? Yeah. Would you like to do something today that will help you? Know? Yeah. I said, well, most of the students in this room are blue-eyed. Part of you are brown-eyed. What if we separate you according to the color of your eyes and treat the people who are brown-eyed better than we treat the blue-eyed people? Oh, yeah, that sounds like fun. And it sounded like fun. And I separated those kids according to the color of their eyes. I put brown-eyed people on the top and blue-eyed people on the bottom. And within 5 minutes, and I swear to you, within 5 minutes, my students knew more about discrimination and racism and prejudice than any teacher in that system did. It was absolutely amazing what I learned that day. And since that day, I have used that exercise, hundreds and hundreds of times with thousands of people. And with students, and yet just yesterday, it doesn't stop. Just yesterday, one of the students was in the film that ABC made, the third year I did the exercise, which was called The Eye of the Storm. One of those students called me yesterday and said, Mrs. Elliott, I've got to talk to you. I said, who is this? Susan Ginder. I said, my Susan Ginder? She said, yeah. I said, were you in my class in third grade? She says, yeah. And now I'm all goosebumps because I was then. I said, oh, Susan, what can I do for you? She said, my daughter had to make a report in school. And because I've talked to her so often about the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise, she made her report on the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And the teacher called me. I said, oh, no. She said, oh, no. She didn't call to complain. She called me because she was thrilled that she had a student in her class who went through that exercise. So she said, I went down and they did an interview and they filmed it. And it's going to be filmed. It's going to be used throughout the school to teach students about what you can learn from somebody who tells you the truth. You know, I could die tomorrow. I can't die today because I got to get this bookshelf put together. I've never put one together before. I was going to call my daughter, but she's busy. So here I am trying to put this bookshelf together, and I'm reading the directions, and I'm separate. Oh my God. Blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people. Make no mistake about that. My husband could have put this together in an instant, and here I am. Anyway, my kids immediately, when we did that exercise, they immediately became what I told them they were. I told my blue-eyed people they weren't as smart as the brown-eyed people, and they became less able to function academically. It was absolutely terrifying. I told my brown-eyed people, and 3 of them were dyslexic boys who had never been able to read well. And on the day they were on the top in that exercise, those dyslexic boys read words I knew they couldn't read, and they spelled words I knew they couldn't spell. Now, you act like I'm making this up. You can't make this up. I wouldn't have believed it if it hadn't happened. I watched Billy, brown-eyed Billy, came up to my desk at the end of the day, and he said, Mrs. Elliott, where's my spelling paper? I said, well, what do you want it for, Billy? He said, I want to take it home and show it to my mother. She thinks I can't spell, and I can. And he started to cry, and so did I, because I didn't realize that he could spell, because he had been living down to my expectations of him, and I based my expectations of him on the kinds of things that his previous teachers said about him and his father in the teacher's lounge of the Riceville Community Elementary School. He was damned from the beginning because, after all, his father didn't learn to read well. His brother didn't learn. His older brother didn't. So obviously, Billy, the whole thing was so amazing and so frightening and so mind-blowing. And it made me so aware of when people say, well, those folks can't think, those folks can't read, if you treat people as though they can't for long enough, pretty soon they can't. And they believe what you've said about them. If you victimize people long enough, they will act like victims. And they will become accustomed to acting like victims. And that's where they're comfortable. This is what has been happening with women in this country for a very long time, and with people of color for over 300 years. It's time to realize that.
Let me ask you a question, Miss Jane, before we break down the experiment. So, in the 1940s, psychologists Kenny and Mamie Clark designed and conducted an experiment that we all know, the doll test.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get the basis of your experiment from that test, or what made you come up with judging people from their eyes?
Number one, what I do is an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is create a microcosm of society in a third grade classroom. Now, if when I do that, it's an experiment, if what I'm doing is based on what we do in the society all day, every day, then what we have been doing with people of color is an experiment. It's illegal and it's unethical to experiment with people without their knowledge or without their permission. We have been experimenting with people of color in this country, if you want to call it an experiment. If that's what I do as an experiment, then that's what we have done with people of color in this country, and better put a stop to it right now. I didn't learn that from a trained psychologist. I learned that from Adolf Hitler. I
Mm.
was born in 1933, which makes me really ancient. So it's all right, people. Be nice to me, because I also know how to destroy you. So just let me alone, okay? I was born in 1933, and that's the year that Adolf Hitler and Franklin Roosevelt came to power in their respective countries. And one of the ways Adolf Hitler decided who would go into the gas chamber or into the concentration camps was eye color. If you had a good German name, but you had brown eyes, they threw you into the gas chamber because they thought you might be a Jewish person who was trying to pass. They
Mm.
killed hundreds of people, thousands, millions of people, 10 million people during what has come to be called the Holocaust. And part of the reason you had to die was eye color. If you don't believe that, well, I could give you a list of books to read that would keep you busy for the rest of your life. And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to get people off television, read what Marshall McLuhan wrote about television, get kids particularly off television, and get them into reading, and teach them to read books that mean something. People, reading is the way out of this mess. Education, real education, is the way out of this mess. Teaching isn't, counseling isn't, psychological nonsense isn't. Education means leading people out of ignorance, and you do that by sending them to books written by people who know what they're talking about. If any of you can get your hands on the book Beyond Racism by Whitney Young, get that book and read it. Now, it'll cost you $600. You have to buy it, but you can probably get it from the library, because it doesn't get checked out very often. And if you go to the library and there's a copy of it there, you can say, I'll give you $5 for this book. And the librarian will say, well, that's probably a good price for that book, because nobody ever checks it out. And the reason nobody ever checks it out is because that man told the truth. He knew the truth. Whitney Young knew the truth. He was what we call black. He was Afro-American, and he was brilliant. Read what Whitney Young wrote about racism, and you will know more than I could ever tell you. The man was absolutely brilliant. I learned
Well,
more that day than I wanted to know about racism. Any other questions, comments, complaints?
Well, let me say this for the people who's joined us in the audience in the comments. We will have a portion here where we will take questions. Miss Jane wants to take questions, so get your questions ready in your head. Well, Miss Jane, you were telling your truth and what you believe to be the truth. So, but at what point did people like your mother stop talking to you? Because I think that's important for people to hear. Because you know, a lot of times when you're fighting for what you believe is true, people who are close to you, sometimes you have to leave them behind, and that's just the truth of it all.
Well, you don't leave them behind. They leave you behind,
Yes.
because they want to stop where they are, and they want you to stop where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I couldn't afford to do that. The first time I told her about what was happening in my classroom, she said, Jane, you want to be careful. You don't want to end up where Aunt Eunice did. I said, where did Aunt Eunice end up? In a mental institution. She thought that what I was describing in my classroom was insane. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't insane. It is what we do in this society all day, every day, and all night. Make no mistake about this. If we treat you badly because of our ignorance about skin color during the day, I have a feeling that you go to bed and dream about it at night. So you are never free from racism in this country, not even in your dreams. I know that because that's what happened with me. From the first day I did that exercise, from that time on, I do the exercise practically every night, because it was such it made such an impression on my mind and on my brain that I can't get away from it. And if that could happen to you, to me, a paleface, because of something that I did for 2 days in my classroom, one day with the brown-eyed people on top and the second day with the blue-eyed people on top, if I have that kind of response to that, my body and my mind response to that, and I'm a pale-faced woman who doesn't have to go through this on a daily basis, but I remember every day of my life, something happens that reminds me of something that happened in those 2 days. And I think the most important thing that happened in those 2 days was the end of the second day. Brown-eyed people were on top the first day. Blue-eyed people were on the bottom. The second day, blue-eyed people were on top. Brown-eyed people were on the bottom. At the end of that day, we got in the magic circle. And the next day, we got in the magic circle and we discussed what had happened. I said to the blue-eyed people, you blue-eyed boys said you were going to get even with the brown-eyed people when you were, the minute you got on top. You got on top and you didn't get even. Why didn't you get even? And that year and every year after that, that I did the exercise, and I did it every year except 2 years while I was teaching third grade. Every year, those kids would say, because we found out how it feels to be treated that way, and we didn't want to make anybody feel the way we felt when we were on the bottom. Now, if pale faces would just hear that and listen to it and respond to it by stopping the ugly treatment they have allowed to be forced on people of color in this country, we could turn this situation around. Nobody is born a racist. There is no gene for racism. You have to be carefully taught to be a racist. And I know how to do that. I also know how to teach people not to be racist. There is no such thing as race. Race is an idea that came out of France in 1580. The word race, meaning a separate group of people, came out of France in 1580. Do you all realize that? You are responding positively to something that happened in 1580, and you are living your life because of something a word that came into existence in 1580. Now, people, if you're going to take on the behaviors that we learned as of 1580, where people of different color groups are concerned, then you need to take on the dress that they used at that time, and all you men will have to come to work in knee breeches and powdered wigs.
Well,
and you women
we about there, Jane. We're
about there. Yeah, we're about there. No, we're nowhere near there. You don't need to think that the Proud Boys are going to come out on the street yelling, "Jules will not replace us," in powdered wigs and knee breeches.
Well, let me ask you this, Miss Jane. You have said on a number of occasions the first person was a Black woman.
The first person was Black. And I don't know whether it was a man or a woman, but I know that the first person was Black. And I have never heard of a male who was equipped to reproduce. Nor have I heard of a female who was equipped to reproduce without the help of a male. You need to realize women have this lovely thing that they hold, that will hold a human being. Men have this lovely thing that will hold little things that look like tiny fishes. Those are the differences between men and women. One of the major differences. Women are equipped to produce. Men are equipped to help that person produce, but not to produce.
So at what point did you find that information out, and how much did it shake up your world?
Oh, Lord, I read the book Mila 18 when it first came out. And it's the story of what happened in the Warsaw, in the ghetto in Germany and in any place in Europe. And it was I went to college. My brother played football, and the most fabulous football player on the other team was the only Black player in Northeast Iowa at that time. And my brother played against him. He said he's the finest athlete and the best sport I've ever played against. Leroy Dunn, he was absolutely magnificent in his ability to play football. All the things that I had heard about people of color when I was in high school were partially destroyed by that. And then I went to college. And as I said, the students who were what we call Black were smarter than I was and knew more than I did, and were going to go farther than I was. And I found out I had been lied to, horribly lied to by my educational experience. I wasn't educated. I was indoctrinated. In this country, what we call education is actually indoctrination. We teach you how to behave in order for you to be a proper American citizen. Now, the word America drives me crazy too, because America is everything from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. Every citizen of every one of those countries is an American. We've got to stop calling this country America and call it what it is, the United States of America. The most important word in that title is the word united. And for the last 4 years, we have had a so-called president who was determined to divide us. And because of his behaviors and because of his words and because of the things that he put in practice, we now are a divided nation. We need to become reunited. We need to realize that there's only one race. You and I are members of the same race, the human race. There's no black race. There's no white race. There's no yellow, red, or brown race. We are all members of the human race, and we come in different colors because of where we were raised. Our body's adaptation to the natural environment is the reason for the color of our skin, our hair, and our eyes. It has nothing to do with being God's chosen children. And here's something, it's Christmas time, right? If you want to be a really good Christian, and I'm sure those of you who appreciate Christ and Christmas will want to be really good Christians, here's what you need to do. Modern day biblical scholars have discovered over years and years of work that Jesus was an Ethiopian Jew. Now, have you ever seen a picture of a Jesus with dark skin and dark hair and dark eyes? Perhaps in a black church you have, but nowhere else.
Okay, in Rome.
In Rome. Good for you. Good for you. Then we need to bring that back to this country. And for you, this year, go down to the place wherever the nearest creche is. Take the little Pillsbury Doughboy out of the manger and put in a dial that looks like Jesus did. It's time for us to start seeing and thinking and telling the truth. You need to realize we one of the main, just a minute, I've got to say this. One of the main differences between white people and people of color is when white people, and we aren't white, when light-skinned people go into a new environment, they immediately adjust the environment to fit their needs. When people of other color groups go into a new environment, they immediately adjust their needs to fit the environment. We have done that with religion. We have taken the baby Jesus, who was an Ethiopian Jew, and turned him into somebody that we pale-skinned people can relate to. We can pray to someone who looks like us. We have turned God into an old white man with a long gray beard that looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses, when God is a spirit and has neither color nor gender. We have used religion particularly to keep blacks and Native Americans in their place by saying we are doing this because we love them. God told us to do this. No, God did not tell us to kill off Native Americans. And it did not tell us to enslave other people. That's an idea that we came to because it made us more money. If you haven't read the book, Rich Thanks to Racism, people get it and read it. It is one of the most important books you will read this year. Rich Thanks to Racism. You'll learn more than you wanted to know about this country and how it is managed so that people of color are considered less than and pale-faced people are considered more than. It makes no sense unless you want to make money. And that's a good way to make money is by pitting people against one another. That's exactly what we do in this country on the basis of skin color.
Well, what do you say to people who say, well, in the Bible, it talks about in Numbers and other places that God made tribes of people and those are different races. And obviously, people can say we're all a human race, but we're certainly not treated as one. Just like this comment here, it says, yes, we are all human. However, color has set the precedent and used to set boundaries and injustices for blacks. It's hard for black people to want to say, oh, we're all the same, because we definitely haven't been treated the same. And if I guess if you're saying that white people are really brown people, I mean, they certainly are ashamed of their race then, if that's the case, because we have been treated horrifically.
Color hasn't set the precedent. Ignorance has set the precedent. The number one problem in the United States of America is ignorance where skin color is concerned. And you can, racism is not the result of skin color. Skin color isn't the problem. Ignorance is the problem. The ignorance about what causes skin color is the problem. Every person that's watching this, if anybody is watching it now, is one of my 30th to 50th cousins, because we all have the same ancestors back there 10,000 years ago. If you trace your ancestry back as far as you can, you'll find out every person in this group, every person who's listening to me, if you trace your ancestry back as far as you can, you'll find out that a percentage of your DNA comes from a country in Africa. That is a fact. Go ahead and do it. I had a discussion with a woman from Japan at my daughter's house.
Ms. Jane, let me just say this. I get that point, but when we look at the history, when we look at the Black woman and how she has been broken apart with our size of our butts and the experiment they did. I can't think of the Black woman's name, and I know somebody in the comments will give it to me, who they experimented on, the experiments they've done on Black women in the medical field, just treating us more harshly because of the color of our skin, the value of the melanin that we have. It's hard for me to just say that we're all the same, because
I didn't say we're all the same. Don't misquote me. I didn't say we're all the same. We're not all the same.
Well, what do you mean when you say when you say human race? Yeah, we're all humans, but we
all came from this. Of course we are. Every mouse is different from every other mouse. Every eagle is different from every other eagle. Differences are natural. Differences occur among people and all over the earth in different ways. Difference is not the problem. Our refusal to accept those differences and to understand the reason for those differences is the problem. What those differences mean is not the same as the meaning that we put on them. We decided that the less melanin you have in your skin, the more intelligent you are. It's a flat out lie. Everybody needs to read the book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Do you realize that 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, Egyptians in the Nile Valley were doing cataract surgery with metal instruments before there was such a thing heard of in this country, before this was a country? You need to realize that. Caucasian people, it says on this thing, Caucasian people are not the same as us. No, they aren't the same as you, but Caucasian people don't exist. We didn't begin in the Caucasus Mountain region. If we had begun there, we wouldn't have lived through the first winter. We began in Africa because Africa offered a place where humans could live as long as they had enough melanin in their skin. Their bodies produce enough melanin to protect their cells from the damaging rays of the sun. And that very fact is what's going to save this nation and the world. Within 30 years, white people will have become a numerical minority in the United States of America. You need to realize that. And as the hole in the ozone layer, just a minute, as the hole in the ozone layer gets larger and larger, and more sunlight is allowed to enter our environment, more and more pale-faced people will die of melanoma, cancer that you get because you're of too much sunlight. People of color, those who are darker skinned, are going to live longer. They were here first. The rest of us are only here because those brave, brilliant, creative, committed people left the area of the equator and moved across the world to populate every landmass on the face of the earth. Every landmass on the face of the earth was populated originally by people from Africa.
Miss Jane,
wait. I gotta say one more thing.
Okay,
and
go ahead.
You gotta know this. Right now, only 15 to 18% of the population of the earth is classified as white. Did you know that? Only 15 to 18% of the earth's population is classified as white. We have got to get accustomed to the idea that white people are not in the numerical majority, nor have we ever been there, nor will we ever be there. We are not smarter than everybody else. We are not more committed than everybody else. And this isn't all about greed and power. This is about ignorance. And if you haven't read the book Rich Thanks to Racism, you need to get it and read it and realize how ignorant greedy people are. Ignorance is the problem. You can teach people out of greed. You can't
Look,
teach them
I
out of
have
the
to
color of their
bring one of
skin.
your words up. You said before that you better hope that Black people don't want to seek revenge. Now, I paraphrase because you did say something like that. But I have to tell you, my audience does know. We know that white or Caucasian numbers are declining. And we definitely see this in the media and in TV shows. They're pushing interracial marriage. But if
Wait,
you want to,
Don't say don't say interracial.
well, let me just finish my thought. The
Okay, go
thing
ahead.
is that the ones of us who are smart, who know that the numbers are declining, we don't want to mix our DNA with Caucasian DNA because we understand and we've been knowing that that's what's going on. They're trying to take our DNA so that the race can continue. We know that that it's declining, but I think a lot of us we don't want to see it happen. We've just been so beat down that we don't want to allow it. Now I know you feel like that should happen because I know you don't want me to say interracial, but
Yeah,
you know,
let's give up the word interracial. As long as there's only one race, it's time to give up the word interracial. If you want to say mosaic, that's better. A mosaic is an art form that is new and beautiful and unique and made of many whatever.
but
Many,
what is
what's the
okay?
word?
So what is race? If you said that we are all different, then what is the definition of race? Then, if we're different but we're all the same race, what does that truly mean?
The human race is people who are those who evolved in sub-Saharan Africa, and because they had a lot of melanin in their skin, they needed a lot of melanin in their skin to protect themselves from the damaging rays of the sun. As they moved farther and farther, they were very dark skinned. As they moved farther and farther from the equator, their bodies produced less and less melanin. So their hair, their skin, and their eyes got lighter. They didn't become a different race. They became a different skin color. They in China, their eyes were slanted because of the fact that the sun's rays hit the ground at a different angle in that part of the world. It has nothing to do with being members of a different race. The Chinese people, like this argument I had with this young Japanese woman, I said, you are a Homo sapien. She said, no, I'm not. I'm from Peking man. I said, well, go home and look it up. Trace your DNA back as far as you can and see what you find out. And she found out when she wrote me a letter and she said, Mrs. Elliott, you were right. I traced my DNA, and part of my DNA came from Africa, and my great grandparents were some of the first Afro-Asian people on the face of the earth. I am Afro-Italian. I'm sorry, Afro-Irish and English. I'm not American. I'm Afro-Irish and English, and I'm proud of that. One of the reasons you can't deny the fact that we all came from the first people who evolved on this earth, and they were Black. It's time to stop denying that.
Well,
And
I
for
don't think
Black
we're
people,
denying that. My last guest, Professor Kaba, said all colors came from Black, and he explained to
that's
us
right.
how you can do that experiment. But if that's the case, if white people know they came from Black, then why are white people of shamed of hence where they come from? Then, if that's the case, if we're all just one human race, then why have they treated their race that is darker than them so horribly? If that's the case, I'm just asking
Because
this question.
during the Spanish Inquisition, a man named Torquemada was going around trying to convert everybody to Catholicism. He killed those that he thought couldn't possibly be Catholics or Christian. He found out that he had killed a whole bunch of Christians. After he realized that, he decided we'd have to find another way to decide whether somebody deserves to live or to die. And they set upon skin color. Now, at that time, if they had read the dictionary, and I'm sure they read whatever book they had that told you what words meant, they chose white for light-skinned people because white in the dictionary is the color of purity and goodness. Did you know that? They
Yeah,
chose
of
Black.
course.
Yeah, of course you do. You have to know that. But most of us don't have to know that. You need to realize that. They chose Black for those who they thought should die, who were dark-skinned, because Black is the color of savagery and evil. Now, ever since the late 1400s, we have been living with the idea that white and black are color groups in human beings. They aren't. Human beings do not come in white and black. If you want to see what being white is like, go Google Tanzania and find out what happens to people who are albinos in Tanzania. It is absolutely terrifying. Google Tanzania and find out what happens to people whose bodies don't produce much melanin. It is terrifying. People, white and black, began in the late 1400s. It's time to stop using those two terms to define people. You are all shades of brown. And if I were teaching today at any level, I don't care what level, I would put the Pantone color wheel up on the wall in my classroom. And I would say to my students, now each of you go to the Pantone color wheel, put your palm against the color wheel and move your hand around it until you come to a color that is the color of the skin on the back of your hand. And from now on, instead, and you won't find anybody whose skin is black, and you won't find anybody whose skin is white. From now on, we're going to call you by your skin color, by that color on that Pantone color wheel. Now you look at the Pantone color wheel, and then to find out what color your skin is, you go to the thesaurus and look at the synonyms for brown. There are about 100 synonyms for brown in the thesaurus. Not that many for black and not that many for white, but there are for brown. So you pick out the color that you think would match the color of your skin, look in the dictionary and see how that's defined. And if that is defined as what matches your skin color, then you use that for your skin color in the future. I got a call from a couple of young women several years ago, and they said, Mrs. Elliott, from now on, when we have to fill in a form and it says race, we're going to put human. I said, that's a good idea. What are you going to put if it says skin color? One of them said, I'm going to put mocha. The other one said, I'm going to put chocolate. And I cheered because, yeah, people come in mocha and chocolate. They don't come in black and white. I'm speckled. I'm going to have to put speckled. And when I have to put race, I put human speckled. Then and the computer kicks it out and they bring it back to me and say, will you put the truth on here? And I say, I put the truth on there. It simply isn't a truth that you recognize. Do you really think that my teeth match the color of my skin? Do you think my skin matches the color of my hair? You can see where my hair stops and my skin begins. This is white, people, except it's kind of yellow in spots right now because I have too high iron content in my water. People, this is not white. Get over it. I can tell what color your hair is, and I can tell what color your skin is, and they don't match. And that's okay. I don't have to be white, and you don't have to be black to be recognized as different and valuable and intelligent and worthwhile and a contributing human being to the human race. I don't have to be white to be able to do that. And you don't have to be black to be able to do that.
Well, for me, and I want to go to another topic after I say this, but there's definitely a difference when you have brown skin or white skin. It's even in the animals, a Dalmatian, and not to be funny, but like Dalmatians aren't as smart when they have that because of their, they have more white and they black, and you see other animals who are missing certain things because of that lack of color. And I believe that the value of melanin, like we just learned in the last episode, is very important, and it's a molecule that is very valuable and that people are searching and trying to make sure that they can have. And that is something that Black people have more of. And I think that because of melanin, we really have to look into that when we're talking about these issues, because that is one thing that really separates us, and it's a reason. It's very valuable. But what I want to go to real quick to shift the conversation, because a lot of people are asking, and I just want them to know I was going to bring this question up so they don't have to worry. But Miss Jane, you know, you have a lot of Black supporters, but I did see recently where a lot of people are losing you at now, and I just want to be honest with you, is on the topic of reparations. Because look, we had Bernie Sanders running for president. He said he was a Black ally, whatever that is. You know, we have some trust issues, Miss Jane, that you have to understand, because we've been hoodwinked. So I just want you to know that's what most people are upset with you about. It's not even the human race part. It's the part that they feel like you don't care to think that Black people deserve reparations. So I want to give you the floor to explain what you meant when you said that.
Do you really care about reparations for all Black people?
ADOS.
Wait a minute. If you really care about reparations for all Black people, you will start by giving reparations to the natives of this continent, whom we called Indians, who are not Indians. They came from Africa, just like all the rest of us did originally. The first people that landed on these shores were Black, and they were from Africa, but they weren't as Black as they had been when they left Africa, because it took thousands of years for them to get here. They appeared on the earth between 300,000 and 500,000 years ago. And about between 10 and 20,000 years ago, they came to this continent. So the people that we are calling Indians, who themselves say they spring up out of the ground, they did not spring up out of the ground. They came here from Africa. So if you want to talk reparations, let's start by giving the land back to the original owners who were from Africa. We aren't going to do that. And I haven't seen a whole lot of people who call themselves Black springing to the help and to the aid and to the comfort and to helping those who came here first. The first Black people who came here from Africa did not come as slaves. They came here and peopled this continent. So if we're going to give reparations to people who are Black, let's start with Native Americans. And then certainly we owe a tremendous amount to those people that we brought here as slaves. And we need to make that right. And we can make it right. And the way we can make it right is by changing the things that are taught in the schools in this country. We need to start teaching the truth. As far as I'm concerned, the greatest reparations we can furnish for people, what we call people of color in this country, is to tell the truth about where we all came from.
But Ms. Jane, we want to specifically know about ADOS, descendants of slaves, Black people. If you believe that a Black person was the first person on this earth and you've seen everything that we went through, we like how you can break down and you see the injustices that we have faced. But it's like a slap in our face when somebody as intelligent as you will tell us that you're an ally of ours, but you don't understand how we deserve reparation. We don't want to hear about Indians. We don't want to hear about this group. We want to only hear about Black people, people who look like me, people who come from grandparents who had to be sharecroppers, who had their land and things taken away from them. That is what we want to hear about. It's crucial. It's important. I'm just telling you, if you're going to be an ally for Black people, Foundation, African Americans, or whatever, you have to understand why it's important to us that we must receive our reparations. We've been through too much. We built this country. We built the White House. Animals get treated better than us. We deserve reparation. We were even Indians. We were Native Americans. And the Native Americans that are claiming to be Native Americans today will barely even accept the true Black Native Americans. So that is a big problem. They already get money and grants and all sorts of things from the government. So you have to understand that ADOS is more than just about monetary thing. We deserve so much. This country owes us so much. This is really our country. Do you understand where I'm coming from when I say that?
I understand where you're coming from, and I need for you to remember that nature is going to take care of this problem. It already is. As you have said just a few minutes ago, you're seeing more people, more Black people, more brown people, more melanemic, more melanaceous, fewer melanemic and more melanaceous and melanotic people on TV all the time. The thing is shifted. It's going to take a long time, but it is going to happen. It is happening even as we speak. When I was your age, a person of your color would not have been allowed to do what you're doing or say what you're saying. I suspect that you're 35, 40 years old.
You almost got me. I'm not 40, that's for sure, but yeah.
well, then that means I have lived 44 years more than you have. So okay. I had 44 years of learning about this crap before you were born. I know what it was like then. I know what it's like now. I know what it could be like in the future if we would all give up our determination to be identified only by the color of our skin. What bothers most white people today, it isn't the color of your skin, it's their ignorance about skin color. And you know, and I know that we melanemic people, and the reason for that word is, if you don't have enough iron in your blood to keep you healthy, you're called anemic. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin to protect yourselves from the rays of the sun, you must be melanemic. And if you have more melanin, you must be melanaceous. And if you have a lot of it, you're melanotic. And that word is in the dictionary, meaning close to black. Look it up, melanotic, melanotic. I want the words melanemic and melanaceous to be in the dictionary, because melanemic people are people who don't have enough melanin in their skin to keep them safe from the dangerous rays of the sun. You need to realize that. I believe in reparations for people of color, but the reason the way I think those reparations should happen is students of color should be given free high school, college, and postgraduate education. I think that's, but I mean education. I don't mean conditioning, and I don't mean indoctrinating. I mean educating. They should be given free education so that they, who are going to be in the position of leadership in this country in the very near future, will be educated and to take that role on and to do it well and to do it better than it has been done in the past. It's my belief. I know that the people of color, the black people particularly, that I know more than I will ever know about being a fully functioning human being. And I know that we melanemic people are perfectly happy to take from any color group the good things that they have. We've stolen their music, we've stolen their language, we've stolen their math. When you realize that these things all came out of Egypt, which is a country of what we call black people.
They stole our God, because in the Bible it clearly says that Jesus was a dark-skinned man. He was that color. So everything was taken from us. That's why we shouldn't have to wait in line for anybody. The LGBTQ is getting what they want. The Native Americans, like somebody put, even they owe us something because they enslaved us as well.
Try living as a black LGBTQ person. You want to know how it feels to be on the bottom. You try being a black gay person. You try being a black lesbian. You take that on for a while. And then you will say to yourself, oh my God, yeah, this is about color. This is about the ignorance about color. We're going to have to start appreciating and recognizing and valuing and admitting the wonderful things that we've gotten from people whose color is different from our own. We owe practically everything we have to people of color. 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ was 6,000 years ago. Think about that. And it has taken us this long to decide that in the Bible, where it talks about the family of man, it doesn't talk about the families of man. It talks about the family of man, because we are all members of the same family. Whether you like it or not, that's the way it is according to the Bible. Now, maybe the person who wrote that particular sentence in the Bible didn't know what he was talking about. It's probably a male, because women weren't allowed to learn in those times.
The Bible also says that the shepherd, who is Jesus, has a flock, but he also is also animals out there that's not his flock, and they won't be coming to live amongst him. So everybody
you want to be careful about the analogies you use, because I do not want human beings to be compared to animals. We have human beings out in the street right today who are acting like a flock of animals. We had a whole bunch of them on January 6th who acted like animals and followed their leader to a disaster.
Well, you know what? If they can't come at me about that, because they gotta look at King James or whoever. They gotta look at the makers of the Bible for that, because that's straight from the Bible.
But wait, what do you do about those people who don't believe the Bible, who don't believe in the Bible, who have a different frame of reference where religion is concerned? They have a right to their beliefs too. They have a right to not have a belief in any religion at all. Your acceptance in any nation should not depend on your willingness to believe in somebody's religious beliefs. That shouldn't be one of the requirements in this country. The requirements in this country should be that you are going to be a good United States of American citizen, and you're going to follow the law. And one of the laws says that we will not judge people. We will have separation of church and state. And what's happening in this country right now and what happened to get Donald Trump elected was the result of evangelical groups deciding that this man was going to be their leader. And we're in this mess partially because of that today. It's going to take us a long time to recuperate what happened to us during Trump's years. That's the scariest time I have lived through. And I lived through the Second World War and the Great Depression. I was born during the Great Depression. I lived through a whole lot of stuff that you haven't experienced yet, but we all experienced the last 4 years. And make no mistake about this. If you think I'm lying about this, get the book, When at Times the Mob is Swayed. And you will read in that book that Donald Trump has in his bedside table in a locked drawer his favorite book, which is The New World Order, which is the writings of Adolf Hitler. Now, when he came to power, I immediately recognized that what we were going into was Hitlerian. And I said to myself, Jane, you're exaggerating. That isn't really happening. And then I read that book and I realized, oh my God, this is exactly what I thought it was. I remember Hitler, and I am reminded of him every time Donald Trump opens his mouth. He is using exactly the techniques to control people in this country and to divide people in this country that Adolf Hitler used in Germany. You need to be aware of that, and you need to refuse to go along. In this country, we go along to get along. Stop going along to get along. Blacks have been trying to lead us down a better path, and they were right. You were right to say, no, what's going on is wrong, and we have to put a stop to it. And what's going on that's wrong is promoting ignorance in the schools in this country on a daily basis.
Miss Jane, how do white supremacy is on every level? Let me tell you, to the point where I don't even want a normal job anymore. Every day of your life, when you're Black, when you have this skin, you have to deal with something that seems like it's coming from whites. Not seem, it is coming from white supremacy. How do we fight white supremacy?
There's no such thing. We aren't supreme. Whites are not supreme, number one. And we aren't white, number two. Stop referring to people as white. Start referring to them as melanemic, and then watch them turn several different colors. When I call some man melanemic, some white man melanemic, he says, what are you talking about? And I turn him into a man of color because he's immediately red. And then I can say, well, you must be someone, like we called Indians. You're red-faced now. That's not funny. You think I'm being funny? I'm not being funny. I'm not white and you're not Black. When we get over the word
Elliott, just
white,
entertain me for a second. Then the people
okay,
the people who have the same color flesh as you, people who are Caucasian,
no.
like, how do we get them to see that white supremacy? How do we get them to? I don't even know if it's about seeing, because it's here. I mean, it's you guys are the makers of it. I mean,
you stop acting as if it makes sense. You stop living down to people's estimation of you or their description of you. You stop tolerating the use of language of the 14th and 15th century and start saying, wait a minute. Now somebody has written on the thing here, America refers to us as Black. You aren't listening. The United States of America refers to you as Black because we are ignorant, because we have been taught that pre-birth and post-mortem. It's a lie. If you haven't read the book, The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman, get it and read it. You'll only have to read the first 2 chapters and the last page of the last chapter in order to realize that we have been indoctrinated with a lie. It isn't a myth. A myth is, Robert Wald Sussman had the wrong title for that book, but if he had called it The Lie of Race, it wouldn't have sold, it wouldn't have gotten published, and nobody would have bought it. But he called it The Myth of Race to dignify what he was writing. A myth is something that you make up to explain something in nature that you don't understand. The Greeks had a myth that said that the sun is a golden chariot carrying a god across the sky in the morning. That's a myth. A lie is something we make up to justify our unacceptable behaviors. And the idea of several different races is a lie. It's a flat out lie that came out of the Spanish Inquisition and needed to have been stopped immediately. But the people who were running the show at that time were light colored in the Northern Hemisphere. And that's another thing you need to talk about. Everybody knows what everybody has seen. If you think this is all my imagination, I'm some kind of a nutcase. Everybody has seen this map of the world, right? Everybody familiar with this map? with Greenland hanging down here like a great big ripe plum in the middle of this map. And look at poor little South America and poor little Africa. And on this map, according to your teachers, the equator is an imaginary line around the center of the earth, separating the northern half of the earth from the southern half of the earth. And it's halfway down. It should be halfway down this map, right? On this map, the Mercator map, the equator is clear down here. It's 2/3 of the way down the map. Therefore, you can't call this the northern hemisphere because it isn't half of the sphere. And you can't call this the southern hemisphere because it isn't half the sphere. This is 2/3 of the sphere and 1/3 of the sphere. This is the map that we use to teach students of all ages about the relative size, shape, location, and importance of the land masses on the face of the earth.
Miss Ellie, I'm not trying to be rude, but we know that Africa is bigger than a lot of the places that they put on the map, but that's another part of white supremacy. That's why we're simply telling you we need our reparations. They lied about everything. They continue to lie.
But you see, we have to start telling children the moment they're born, they have to see the truth instead of the lie, or they'll believe the lie. It's time to start telling the truth. It's time to start using a map on which the equator is halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole, in which Africa is its right shape and size, and South America is its right shape and size, and Greenland is its right shape and size. We need to start telling the truth. The reason you need reparations is because you have been lied to all your life. It's time. The greatest reparation we could give for the human race is to tell the truth, particularly in the educational institutions in this country. It's time to tell the truth. Now, white folks aren't going to like it, and I don't care. Black folks aren't going to like it, and I don't care. Nobody wants to be told that they're all shades of brown. Everybody is accustomed to the two words white and black. The greatest reparation we could give to all of us, but particularly to those who consider themselves black, is to teach them the truth and to fund their education in such a way that when they leave school, they know what they are instead of living down to the expectations built into them by an educational system that lies about what they are and where they came from.
We don't even need the education at the college, because if Caucasian people just didn't lie about everything and whitewash it, then then most of our people would already know the truth. But it's people like me who grew up with parents like mine, especially my mother, who taught me the truth. My great grandfather, who lived to be in his hundreds, and my grandmother right now is 95 years old. Hearing their stories and what they had to go through, my grandfather having to tell a white boy, call him sir, or he would be penalized or in trouble. Hearing stories like that, you know why I can't accept that this human race thing, and we all are, I get it, God made us all, but the problem I think about is when our babies were fed to alligators, when our parents were raped, our great grandparents
I'm busy, you'll have to call back.
When they whitewashed our history, when even in media and TV, they won't even make a music about the great African dynasty and the great black stories that they never want to make a story about, a movie about. When I think about all the black men who have been killed at the hands of violence by Caucasian people, and it just goes with no justice. When I think about those type of things, I just cannot consider us, and I know you said we're different, but I can't just look at it as just the human race. Because if you're saying that we're all just different shades of brown, how can you treat your brother and your sister like that? How could you have done the thing that you did to your mother? I mean, the black woman raised white children. We gave them nutrients from our breasts, and those same children turned their backs on us. So that's why I can't go along with that. And it's just a slap in our face after all we've done for this country. When people, and I'm telling you this, Miss Jane, because you said it means a lot to you what black people think and everything. So I'm just letting you know, when we have people who say they want to be on our side, but they don't understand how deep this is, it hurts. Then we have black people, coons we have to deal with. Like this shirt I'm selling right here on my website, just a plug. And then we have people who look like us who make it hard for us as well. So not only do we have to fight Caucasian people because of white supremacy and the systematic things, we also have our own people who are against us because of what they've been taught and because they hate themselves because of what they don't know about themselves. So this thing is deep.
Of course it's deep, and it's been going on for 300 years. Of course it's deep, and I'm not denying that for a moment. I'm telling you that as long as we use the language of the 14th and 15th century, we will have the problem that they started in the 14th and 15th century. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. We kill people with words all day, every day. We kill people's aspirations. We kill people's hopes. We kill people's dreams because of the words that we use to describe them. It's time for us to start by re-educating ourselves. The ignorance in this country is not just ignorance, it is self-imposed ignorance. We don't know the truth, and we don't take the time to learn it. And Marshall McLuhan told us, stay away from television. It will destroy your mind. It will destroy your country. And that's exactly what has been happening. Television, for the last, ever since it's been out there, has been a way to teach about the rightness of whiteness. Finally, now they're beginning to show people who are black and who are female, which is a totally different thing from what it was 40 years ago. I remember 40 years ago. Now, I don't have the same memory of 40 years ago that your mother or your grandmother or your great grandmother had. But what I have is the determination to see to it that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Who was it said that? Those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. Right now, for the last 4 years, until January 6th, we repeated the mistakes of Hitler in the 1930s to 1945. We have been repeating the mistakes of the past. It's time for us to realize that they were mistakes. It's time for us to put a stop to this. And reparations are fine as long as you use those reparations to educate people, all people, to the truth, instead of continuing to use words like Caucasian and white and black and white supremacy. Every time you say white supremacy, one of the Proud Boys gets another smile on his face because you have recognized what he thinks he is. He isn't white and he isn't supreme. The Proud Boys have got nothing to be proud of. And every time you allow the people in the Boogaloo group or the KKK to march through the streets saying, Jews will not replace us, what they need to realize is that our Christianity came out of the Jewish faith. They need to realize that if they're going to throw away the baby with the bathwater, that's exactly what they're doing when they say Jews will not replace us. People, it's time to stop repeating the words white supremacy and Caucasian and say Afro-Americans, which is what we all are in this country. We are all Afro-Americans. I'm Afro-Irish American. That's the way it is. I understand that. And probably what makes me so determined is the fact that a portion of my DNA came from a country in Africa.
Well, if we all call each other Africans, how will we know our enemies?
What?
How will we know our enemy? Because those
by
who
the
have
way you know them by the way they speak, and you know them by the things they do. You do not judge them by the color of their skin. You don't see a person with pale skin and automatically think that that's an enemy. That is exactly what we have taught pale-faced children to do in this country for the last 300 years. First, they were the Indians. If they looked like an Indian, they must be our enemy. We killed them. Then we enslaved the blacks, and then we made them enemies by the way we treated them, and then we killed them. And then during the Second World War, we weren't going to allow them into the military until Franklin Roosevelt's wife said, Eleanor Roosevelt said, these people are fit to be in the military. There are good things that happen to us after the military. So at that point, she insisted that they be in the military. Now, it's not a problem for a dark-skinned person to get in the military. We depend on them when we fight our wars. You know it, and I know it. We realize how brilliant they are when we send them into the military. And we find out how committed they are and how intelligent they are when they live through that experience. It isn't what we expect them to do.
Miss Jane, this is your words now. You said that all white people are racist. You said white people are racist. So for me, Skin is important. We've been judged by our skin. So for us, for someone to tell us, don't look at the skin, you also said we can't be colorblind. You said, no, no, no. You
I
can't.
didn't say don't look at the skin. No, 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 no. I said don't look. I never said don't look at the skin. Differences are important. Differences are valuable.
Okay.
I was married to a man. I am a woman. Those differences are important.
Yes, they
Those
are.
differences, yeah, oh yeah, they are. Differences are valuable. I've never said they weren't. I've never said, and I have said that if you were educated in the United States of America and you aren't a racist, you need to take the course over again, because that's what education in this country does. It teaches you the value of being white and the problem of having these people of color around, what we have to do for these people. I'm tired of people being called allies. I don't want to be your ally. I'll be your partner, but I don't want to be your ally. Allies are people who come and go. That's kind of like the difference between a committed relationship and a marriage.
Mm.
Not the same thing. I'd love to partner with people in solving this problem, but I don't want to be your ally, because that means that's a temporary situation. I can't afford for me to take a 2-year time to talk about racism. And that's what we melanemic women do. We'll jump on a project and stay with it for, maybe 2 years. But if it isn't solved by the end of the second year, then we'll jump on another project and try to change that, because we all know what's best for everybody. That is not the way I run my life, and that's not the way I will run my life. I am in this situation for as long as I live, because you are going to be your color for as long as you live, and you have the right to be your color and to be seen as a fully functioning, absolutely positive citizen of the United States of America and of the world. You have the right to be seen as you are, and to be seen as a valuable person as you are, not as you look more and more like me.
Miss Jane, can I be honest with you? And hopefully you'll still pick up the phone when I call. Like, okay.
I look at the number first. Go ahead.
Okay. But
and you want to remember that numbers are written in black ink on white paper.
Okay, yeah, Dr. Francis probably have broken that down before. But let me tell you, every time you call yourself a melanated, you say we're melanated people, I feel offended. I feel, and I'm just being honest.
Why?
Because I know everybody has a little melanin, but Black people are the true melanated people. And I don't feel like I feel like that comes with an experience that you haven't had.
Of course, and I've had experiences that you've never had, but I don't hold it against you.
Well, Miss Jane, but if I just said my grandmother was raped, our babies were fed to alligators, I gotta hold it against you.
Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense, but you can if you want to. You can hold those people who did those things responsible for what they did. You can't hold
but you have white people or Caucasian people have benefited from what your ancestors have done, and that's the whole thing of white supremacy. You have benefited financially, education wise, on every single level, so that's why it matters.
It matters, but accusing me of being the one who did it won't do you any good at all, because you know I didn't, and I know I didn't. And
I'm not saying you did. I'm saying your ancestors did
it. I am not responsible for what my ancestors did. And I don't feel guilt about what my ancestors did. They did that. I didn't. I am responsible for what I do. I am responsible for what I say and what I think and what I do and what I allow to happen in my presence. I'm responsible for what I taught my third graders, which is there's only one race. It's the human race, and you'd better get used to it. You'd better realize that we all came from a country in Africa, every single one of us. And while those of us who look like me have had a history of being ugly and greedy and unchristian, while we created a Christian God that doesn't look like Jesus did, because we had the power to do it, now we have the power. People like me right now have the power to change this thing. We have the power to turn this around, and we have to turn it around. But 5 years ago, we decided not to turn it around. We decided to elect a person with the help of some Black evangelical Christians he put in power a man who would make us live down to his expectations of us.
Mm.
I'm not responsible for what happened those years ago, but somebody said, no, but you sure benefit. That's a cop-out. It's not a cop-out to say I'm not responsible for what happened in the past. I am responsible for what I do in the present to change the future. That's what I'm responsible for. And if I cooperate with the people who want to keep somebody like Donald Trump in power, then you can call me responsible for the ugly things that are happening today and that will happen tomorrow. What we do today in the present constructs the future. And what we have to do is construct a future in which people are seen as all equally human, and in which color is seen as an important difference. But watch out for us white folks, because I did a speech in a university in Texas a couple of years ago. White folks you have to watch out for. You don't have to watch out for melanated folk, but you have to watch out for white folks, because they believe in the rightness of whiteness. And in the middle of my remarks, an educator stood up, one of the instructors at that university stood up and said, "Mrs. Elliott, I just look for the person's heart." And I didn't want to be interrupted, but she interrupted me. She shouldn't have done that. I said, "Madam, if you can see my heart from where you're standing, you should go down to your local hospital and volunteer to be their x-ray machine. You can save them a lot of money." She said, "You don't understand what I'm saying." I said, "I understand exactly what you're saying. You have to deny the color of a person's skin in order for you to relate to them. You have to go straight to their heart. Have you ever dressed a chicken?" She said, "What do you mean?" I think she thought I meant put clothes on a chicken. I said, "Have you ever cut up a chicken and gotten it ready to fry?" "Well, no." I said, "Well, if you ever had, you would realize that our hearts are very colorful. Our insides are extremely colorful. You wouldn't like to see somebody's heart. Believe me." She said, "I don't have to put up with this. I'm leaving." I said, "Right, you're right, you are." And she had already left mentally. She might as well have gone sooner. She walked out, and those students looked at me like, "What have you done?" I said, "Wait a minute, people. She just exercised a freedom that most people of color and most students of color, particularly blacks, in this university do not have. When you get tired of hearing some white woman," and I used the word white at that time, "when you get tired of hearing some white woman say things like she just said, you don't have the power to stand up and say, 'What you just said is racist, and I don't have to listen to it.' You have to sit there and take it if you want to pass the course." She has the power to say, "I don't have to listen to this," and walk out. She isn't going to lose anything except my respect for her, and she's going to realize, the students in this room are going to realize, that she doesn't recognize racism when she's practicing it. And when teachers come into classroom the first day of school and say to those students, no matter what the classroom is like, "When I see people, I don't see people as black or brown or red or yellow. I just see people as people," they're lying, and you know they're lying. And eventually some bright kid is going to stand up and say, "Do you see white folks?" And she's going to kick him out of class. That's what's going to happen. People, it's time for us to change the language. You will not change the situation until you change the way you describe it. We've got to change the words we use in this country.
Okay, I want to thank you, Miss Jane. I want to open the comments. No, and I know, really, thank you. I want to open while we still got a little time here. I don't want to take your whole afternoon. We're over the hour mark. So if you guys want to ask questions, please go ahead. Be respectful. Put them in the comment box, and I will pop them up on the screen. So guys, please ask a question while we have Miss Jane here, and I will pop it up on the screen for her to respond to. She said she was open to questions. So if I get some questions right now, I will ask her, just waiting on those questions to come through. So Miss Jane, I'm just waiting on these questions, but what are you hoping your legacy will be when this is all said and done?
Oh, I don't think much about my legacy, but I would hope that if I had a tombstone, which I won't have because people would come and make ugly things, do ugly things on it, and I know that. So, if I had a tombstone, it would say she did her best. That's it. That's all I can do. All I can do is the best I can do, and that's all I can do. And and yesterday, when Susan Ginder called me, I realized that I had been a successful human being, because here's a woman whose daughter is writing an essay about what her mother went through during the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise, and she is being raised to be a different kind of person than the students whose parents didn't have whose parents didn't have that exercise. Those kids are different to this day as parents and grandparents. They are different from their peers, and they're different because they had an opportunity to find out how it feels to be other than white in the United States of America, and they didn't like it, and they said, we've got to put a stop to it. And to this day, they are different. That's what education is supposed to do. It's supposed to lead us out of ignorance. And when I was teaching in Riceville, my sister was substituting at the junior high level, and the junior high English teacher came down to the lunchroom one day, just furious. She said, the worst thing just happened in my classroom. And I said, well, and my sister said, what happened? She said, I used the word, and she used the N-word. And one of my students stood up and said, we don't use that word in this classroom. And if you're going to use it, I'm going to go out in the hall until you stop. She said, what would you have done? And my sister said, well, I believe I'd stop using the N-word. Now, you see, that 7th grade boy, because he'd been through the exercise in 3rd grade, refused to tolerate that word being used in his presence. He was right, and she was wrong. She should have apologized. She should have written on the chalkboard 100 times, I will not use the N-word. I will not use the N-word. I will not use the N-word, because that's one of the ways we use to punish children who use bad language. That word is bad language when used by melanemic people. When it's used by melanaceous and melanotic people, that's their word, and they have the right to do with it what they want to.
Okay, well, Miss Jane, we have our first question here. With your knowledge of truth, and this is by Dee Dee Jones, how are you perceived by people without melanin?
As their enemy, as their absolute enemy. If I'm right, they're wrong, and I have to be wrong in order for them to be right. That's okay. I just assume be their enemy. But if they want to find out whether I'm right, all they have to do is go to my website, jane@janeelliott.com, download the printed learning materials. The first page is a set of typical statements the white folks make. Melanemic folks make them, but white folks are the ones who are making them. Melanemic folks have stopped saying them. Go through that list of statements that you have heard and that you would believe in, and then go to the clarifications of those statements, how they are perceived by those who are on the receiving end of them, and then you will never say those things again. Then go to the 3rd page, which is a set of commitments to combat racism. 18 things you can do in your own environment to challenge and change your own racism. Then you go through those, check yes or no for those you have done and you have done. Then go back and circle one that you check no and do it for a month. At the end of the month, take that paper out, write some things that you learned by doing that one commitment, and then choose another commitment. By the end of 18 months, you will have changed the way you behave, the way people behave around you, and how your friends are, because you'll have lost a few friends, but gained a lot more. After you've done, if you don't want to do those, then go to the bibliography and read at least one of the many books under the word racism. Read Anthony Browder's material, the Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. If you have children in school, oh my goodness, Nathan Rutstein's book about children and education. It's just amazing. Get anything, oh my God, written by Frances Cress Welsing. Some of you pale-faced folks are going to turn inside out when you
love her.
When you read oh my gosh, she's so brilliant. She is so brilliant. You read it and you say, why didn't we learn this in school? You see, this is the thing. Melanemic people don't know what melanaceous and melanotic people know because they've never had to. And because it isn't part of our life experience, we say it isn't happening to anybody else. It's happening to now over a third of the population of the United States, which is melanotic, and we melanemic people know nothing about it. Read every book you can that's written by a person of another group, another cultural group, another color group. Educate yourself about those who are different from yourself. Those of you who are melanaceous and melanotic don't have to read about white folks. You see them all the time. You know how we act. You know how we behave, and you can tell the difference between somebody who is white and somebody who sees themselves as melanemic. There's a big difference in those two people. We have the same education, but we relate to that education in different ways. As long as you
Somebody
think
just
you're
made a
white, you're
good
all right.
point here.
Go
In the
on, go
Bible,
on.
there's several times where God promoted certain people. He gave them a new name. He gave them a different title. Yeah, he made us all, but he made it clear that some people are just a step above the rest. There's many examples of the Bible where he did that. So I just want to bring that up. So
I don't think that's right. I don't think he made a certain group above the rest. I think that
I
what
said there were
happened was,
certain people that he did in the Bible point
well,
out.
that's that. Well, yeah, well, the Bible says that there are lots of things that are interesting, but we have to think about them before we repeat them. I don't think that a supreme being decided that people who were of a different shade of brown were going to be placed in a higher position than those who were in a darker brown. I don't think that's the way it was. I don't think that's the way it was, and I don't think that's the way it needs to be. I think racism is invented as a creation of white people. I do not think that we are automatically, because of the color of our skin, judged as better or worse. If that's true, I think there's going to be a whole lot of melanated people who are going to be really surprised when they go through the golden gates, the pearly gates, and are greeted by an Ethiopian Jewish Jesus. That's going to turn them white right now. You need to realize that you can use, and we have used, religion to keep people in their place for long enough. In this country, we have deliberately used religion to keep people of other groups in their place and to elevate our melanemic selves. It's time to put a stop to that. I
Well, I have to
believe in,
say it's not the religion, it's the people. People are what messed up.
absolutely.
God's word is God's word, and people perceive it how they want to perceive it. Your translation will be different from mine because God said you have to read in the spirit. So,
Once again, words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. We
yes.
use words to separate people all the time. And as long as we say that that supreme being is God, then those who believe that that supreme being is Yahweh or is another name for what we call God, then we can say to ourselves that only our way of believing in that supreme being is right. I don't think we have the right to do that. I think we have to. I think we, and Francis would tell us we are exceptional to them. I think Dr. Frances Cress Welsing would, in fact, and I've read her, so I know that she says that your exceptional being is not because of the color of your skin. It's because of what you have become, what you were in the beginning, and what you could be today if you hadn't spent centuries being told that you were less than.
Even our genetic makeup is different though. It's for me. I can't accept certain. I can't. It's just no. It
You
is.
don't have to. You
Dr.
don't have to
Francis
accept
talked
it.
about our genetic makeup. The black woman, the black man, we just made different. I mean, we don't have to get into all that, but the truth is out there. You know, I appreciate a lot of things that you come up with too. I just wanted to have the discussion and put it
No,
out there.
Bell Hooks and Frances Cress Welsing were two of the most brilliant women whose books I have ever read.
Mm-hmm.
They were absolutely the things that they say are so brilliant and so on target that why we don't insist that they be consumed. I don't just mean read, I mean consumed by every student who graduates from high school in this country. Those things ought to be read, those things ought to be internalized. If we would do the proper job of educating, we wouldn't have to have a discussion like this one.
Well, Miss Jane, another question here. How do you feel about Jews and Japanese getting reparations and ADOS and FBA not getting reparations? I know we've hit that reparations topic quite a bit, but people are still interested.
Those things were done during a time of rampant racism. The only way we're going to keep that from happening anymore is to destroy the racism. Mm-hmm. Reparations will not destroy racism. Education will destroy racism, and in the future, we won't need to have people in situations where they feel like they need reparations because we have treated them fairly. Until we start treating people fairly, you can expect people to ask for reparations. You want to solve that problem, start treating people fairly. It's about justice, and so far, justice has been for just us. And there's another book you'd ought to read. Just Us. Read that book just as soon as you can. You will love it. It's written by a Black person who is, it is, I'm reading it right now and it is fantastic. It's called Just Us. Everybody should read it.
Well, but before you get out of here, Miss Jane, I have to know, did you get your money back from the store?
What's money back from what store?
You said you was taking some meat back to the grocery store that you had. Wait, no, Jane Elliott said she was taking meat back to the store she already cooked, and I said if you can get that money back, I want to know.
I cooked it another 5 hours, and now I'm eating it because my granddaughter didn't show up, so now I'm forced to eat that meat. And after I cooked it another 4 hours, it is palatable, but that's all. And I don't want to feed it to the chickens because I don't have any chickens. If I were in Iowa, I'd feed it to my daughter's chickens, and I'd feed it to her dogs. But I'm not there, and I just can't stand to waste anything. I was born in the Great Depression, so I don't waste things if I can avoid it. So here I am eating this meat that I'm really angry about, but I'll just know better than to buy it from that particular store in the future. And I'll complain to the manager when I go and get something else out of that store. I'll say, I want to tell you what happened to me. And then when I come in the door, he will do what he used to do when my husband walked in the door. He'll run to the back room so that he doesn't have to meet me in any of the aisles. Because I'm really a nice person, but he doesn't know it.
You know what? Did you have a good time today, Miss Elliott? Because I know we've been trying to hook up for a while.
Yes, I did. Did you learn anything? Did you learn anything about me today?
Well, I already knew this stuff about you. So, I mean,
okay,
it was just more. Go ahead.
And I learned something that I knew about melanaceous and melanotic people, which is they don't want to give up the word Black because they have been conditioned to believe that that's what they are.
No, we could not.
You're melanaceous and you're melanotic and you're members of the human race. And I'm melanemic, and that's not my fault. And I'm not responsible for the color of my skin, but I am responsible for the way I react to people whose skin color is different from my own. And
we don't have an enemy, Miss Elliott. The Bible says the enemy still kills and destroys. And all I know is throughout the history of Black people, brown skinned people, we have had an enemy that has killed, steal, and destroyed our people.
That is the enemy of ignorance. That is the enemy of ignorance. And the way you kill the enemy of ignorance is with real education, not teaching, not indoctrinating, but education. We could kill the enemy, which is called ignorance. I honestly believe that. And we kill that enemy by educating people, by insisting that they read books that were written by, for, and about people who are other than what we have been telling children to read in the past. It's time for us to start reading the books that tell the truth. And that's those people who are not melanemic know more about racism than I'll ever learn. You know that, and I know that. But if I had been a melanaceous or melanotic people, the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, if I had been a person of color that day, I would have lost my job if I had done that job and that exercise, and I might have lost my life. But because I am melanemic, they were willing to listen to me. And that is exactly the reason why melanemic people are willing to listen to me today, is because I have the right color skin. This makes no sense. You know more about this topic than I do, and I know that. I'm fully aware of that. But somebody has to be able to stand up and say, look, fellas, and I do this regularly on a college stage. I say, look, to those three pale-faced boys in about the second or third row who are using their fingers like little pistols and pointing them at me. I say, look, fellas, I know what you're thinking about, and I know what you're talking about. You'd like to see me dead. Make no mistake about this. You could kill me. It won't bother me a bit. I've got a son and a husband that are dead, and I'd like to be with them. So you can't bother me with threatening me with death. However, you need to know that if you kill me because of what I do, you might make a martyr out of me, and you might have to spend the rest of your life celebrating Jane Elliott Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that? And they go, no. And they do this thing. No. I say, fine, then shut up and listen while I'm talking. And they shut up and listen while I'm talking. Unfortunately for them, they have exposed themselves dangerously because all the melanaceous and melanotic men in the room turn, and now they see them and they know who they are. And those three boys get over the back of their seats and run out of the building before the speech is over, because they know they have been identified as being blatantly racist. We need to change our behaviors if we're going to be accepted. Melanin people need to change our behaviors if we're going to be accepted in the future, worldwide, but certainly in the United States of America.
Okay. Are you concerned about, well, no, I guess you wouldn't be concerned about the number of Caucasian people declining.
No, I don't think that doesn't concern me at all. There were no so-called Caucasian. I wish you'd stop using the word Caucasian.
Well, no, because in other interviews you said that white men are fearing this. That's what you said.
Well, I said what?
You said that white men are in fear because of the declining numbers.
Well, they absolutely are. They're scared to death that they are going to be treated in the future the way they have treated people, black and brown people, in the past. They're scared to death. We all know, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, right? That's in the Bible, right? Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Do you really believe that melanemic men want to be treated the way they have treated melanaceous and melanotic men in the past? Do you really believe that's the way they want to be treated?
Of course not.
Of course not. So you see, we can quote the Bible till hell freezes over, but we know that we do not want to follow that verse in the Bible. I don't want to be treated the way we white people have treated people of other groups in the past. I do not want to be treated in the future the way we have treated them in the past and the way we are treating them in the future. But many melanemic men are scared to death that that's exactly what's going to happen to them. And when I started my remarks, the first thing I said was, my third graders found out by being on the bottom that they didn't want to be treated the way they were treated the day they were on the bottom, and they didn't want to treat anybody else the way they were treated the day they were on the bottom. It changed the way they feel about the treatment they are going to allow to happen to those who are different from themselves in the future. I think that's called good education. And I think not very many, oh Lord, the number of pale faces who have gone through an experience like every melanotic child goes through from the age of 5. The number of melanemic men who have gone through those experiences is not even 1% of the population of the United States. Until that happens, we're in trouble. Henrietta Lack was absolutely remarkable. Remarkable, but not remarkable because she was remarkable before melanemic people recognized her brilliance. But we didn't teach much about her in school, did we? Practically, I would think that very, very few melanemic people learned about Henrietta Lacks in school. And I know they didn't, most of them didn't read Frances Cresswell thing or Bell Hooks, because both of those women, all three of those women, proved that there is a greatness in those who are other than melanemic that we refuse to admit, we refuse to recognize, and we refuse to praise. Because if they're right, I must be wrong.
Well, Miss Jane, thank you so much for everything today. And pick up that phone if I give you a call again. Don't act like you don't know about it.
I'll pick up that phone and I'll say, call me later. I'm busy right now. Which I just did to somebody. I don't know who it was, but it'll be interesting when I find out. I hope if I have offended someone today, I am not in the least bit surprised. I understand that. I understand that it's offensive for me to say, we've got to change this situation. We've got to change our vocabulary. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by you. And here's another thing you have to remember. Victor Hugo said, no power on earth can stop a man with a dream or an idea whose time has come. We killed Martin Luther King Jr. because he had a dream. His dream is more alive now than it was when he was living. And no power on earth is going to be able to stop the idea of one race. It is an idea whose time has come, and no power on earth is going to be able to stop it, because it's the truth. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set ye free. I'm tired of being constrained by the lies of several different races. There's only one. You and I are 30th to 50th cousins, whether you like it or not.
But I have to say, Martin Luther King was also shot because of his message, but he was shot because of his skin color.
He was shot because if he and Malcolm X got together, they would have upset the economy of this country. If they had gotten together, they and their followers, he was seen as an economic problem for the people who ran this show and who still run this show. If you haven't read Robert Reich's book, The System, get it and read it and learn about the business roundtable. Honest to God, people, this is not coming out of me. The things I say come out of books that I have read by people who knew what they were talking about. Get Robert Reich's book, The System, and get the book, Rich Thanks to Racism, and then realize what it is we're fighting. We are not fighting skin color. We are fighting ignorance.
Thank you, Miss Jane.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Call again sometime.
I will.
If you still have any listeners or viewers, let me know what they're saying and thinking. That'll be interesting.
Yes, I will. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you. Enjoy your supper, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks for letting me run my mouth. All right.
No problem. You take care.
Okay. You too. Bye now.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. Make sure you tune in to the next episode of Kera Dangerous Talk, and make sure you check out Kera Dangerous Live. Will be coming up this week with Billy Slum and a live performance by him and his band. So make sure you join that. Look at the community page on the YouTube channel and check out when new shows will be dropping. Make sure you like this video, comment, and share. That's the most important thing to do to fight those shadow bans and everything. Thank you so much for your support. I wish you guys nothing but the best, and love yourself and keep your head up. Until next time, you already know what it is.